The morning park shimmered with sunlight and birdsong. Children laughed near the fountain, adults strolled by, dogs chased patches of light along the path. But for Jasmine Carter, 24, it all felt like a distant picture. She walked briskly across the cobblestone path, clutching a slightly crumpled folder. The small backpack on her shoulder was heavy, not with things, but with quiet worries. Today, Jasmine was on her way to a cafe by the park where she had an interview for a part-time job, not because she had free time, but because she needed a second job. Her grandmother, the only family she had left, the woman who had raised her, was in the hospital. Her condition was worsening each day. The treatment costs were rising. Jasmine's current cleaning job wasn't enough. Every step she took now was a silent plea. She glanced at her watch. 15 minutes left. Just enough to be on time if nothing unexpected happened. A breeze passed gently. A golden leaf drifted past her eyes. Jasmine whispered under her breath, as if to steady her nerves. If I can just get this job, maybe things will be a little better. She kept walking, not knowing that in just a few more minutes, her life was about to turn in a direction she never imagined. The bird song and footsteps faded into the background as another sound slipped into Jasmine's ears. Fragile, faint, like a whisper carried by the wind, a soft cry. She stopped, frowned. Her eyes scanned the grass, the row of benches, the tree-lined path. No one seemed to notice. People laughed, posed for photos, jogged by as if nothing was wrong. The sound came again, clearer this time, trembling like it was shivering in the air. Jasmine slowed her steps, following it, and then she saw her. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, stood alone near a bench by the pond. Her dark hair fell messily around her face, and she clutched a white stuffed bunny tight against her chest. Her eyes were red from crying, her cheeks streaked with tears, her knees visibly shaking. Jasmine knelt gently, her voice as soft as a warm blanket. "Sweetheart, are you lost?" The child flinched, stepping back, her wide eyes filled with fear, but after a few silent seconds she gave a tiny nod. "I followed the butterflies, then I couldn't find Daddy," she whispered, her voice cracking. Jasmine exhaled, then slowly sat down beside her. "What's your name?" "Maya," the girl breathed, almost inaudibly. "And this is Bunny. He's scared too." Jasmine looked around. No one noticed. Everyone was locked inside their own little world. But this child, this fragile child, was alone in a world too big and too cold. She should keep walking. Her interview was in 10 minutes. But Maya's eyes held a silent question, like no one had ever truly stopped for her before. Jasmine sat down beside her. "It's okay," she said softly. "I'll stay with you." Jasmine sat quietly beside Maya for a long moment. She didn't ask too many questions. She simply stayed, warm, present, calm. Maya leaned a little closer, still hugging Bunny tightly, her eyes scanning every passerby with a faint flicker of hope. "Are you thirsty?" Jasmine asked gently. Maya nodded, licking her dry lips. The sun was getting harsher and her small face was starting to flush red from the heat. Jasmine reached into her jacket pocket. A few loose coins clinked softly, barely enough for anything. She had planned to use them for a small coffee before her interview, something to keep her awake after another sleepless night worrying about her grandmother. But now, she looked at Maya, this little girl with no parent in sight, no water, no idea what to do except cling to a stuffed bunny. Without hesitation, Jasmine stood up and crossed the park to a nearby kiosk. She bought the one cold bottle she could afford and returned, kneeling to hand it to Maya. Maya accepted it with both hands, as if it were the most precious gift in the world. After a small sip, she looked up at Jasmine, her eyes lighting up with a soft glow. "You're like the fairy ladies from my storybooks," Maya whispered. For the first time that day, Jasmine smiled. A real smile, soft and surprised, like a flicker of light breaking through a storm she hadn't realized she was walking in. They had only shared a quiet moment when a voice rang out across the park, shattering the calm. "Maya." The call echoed through the trees. Jasmine looked up and saw a group of men in dark suits hurrying toward them. One of them, tall, urgent, with a presence that drew attention, locked eyes on Maya and picked up his pace. "Daddy!" Maya jumped to her feet, the water bottle slipping from her hand and landing in the grass. She ran straight into his arms. Daniel Everett, a name Jasmine didn't recognize, but the financial world knew all too well. Daniel scooped his daughter into a tight embrace, but his eyes immediately shifted to Jasmine, sharp, guarded, like twin blades. "Who are you?" he asked. His voice wasn't loud, but it was firm and cold. "What were you doing with my daughter?" Jasmine froze. She stood quickly, flustered. I was just helping. She was lost. I wasn't." Daniel didn't let her finish. He nodded to the security guard at his side. "Check her ID and her bag." One of the men stepped forward. Jasmine stiffened, slowly handing over her worn wallet, hands trembling. She had never felt so small, so humiliated. "Daddy, wait!" Maya tugged on his sleeve, her voice pleading. "She didn't do anything bad. She got me water. She's really nice." Daniel looked at his daughter, then at Jasmine, with her faded coat, tired face, and battered backpack beside the bench. In his eyes, she was an unknown, and that made her dangerous. "I've seen too many people use children to get close to people like me," he muttered under his breath. In Jasmine's eyes, fear gave way to quiet pain. She lowered her head, biting her lip. She never expected that kindness could be mistaken for threat so quickly. Just a few minutes later, one of the security men returned. He stepped up to Daniel and leaned in to whisper something quietly. Daniel's face shifted, first with surprise, then slowly into something more thoughtful. "We checked the security cameras near the pond," the guard said softly. "She didn't move from the area. She just sat with the girl and bought her water." Daniel said nothing at first, his eyes fixed on Jasmine, the young woman clutching the frayed strap of her backpack, her face drawn with exhaustion, but bearing no trace of deception. Maya spoke up, her voice small but firm. "He used her last coins to buy me water. She didn't take anything. She just wanted to help." Jasmine's shoulders trembled slightly, but she said nothing. Her pride held her back. It wasn't just the humiliation, it was the ache of being judged for doing the right thing. Daniel took a deep breath. Something in his expression softened, a tiny fracture in the layer of suspicion. "I'm sorry," he said, voice no longer sharp. "I overreacted. Ever since my wife passed away, I've been afraid of losing anyone else." Jasmine looked up. She didn't answer right away. She just gave a slight nod. "I understand," she said gently. "If I had a child like Maya, I'd probably do the same." After a quiet pause, Daniel looked at Maya, then turned to Jasmine. "You stayed with her, even when you could have walked away," he said, his tone softer now. "I owe you a thank you, and at least a proper meal." Jasmine hesitated. She glanced at her watch. The interview was definitely missed by now, but strangely, she didn't feel regret. Part of it was because of Maya, and part of it was because, for the first time in days, she didn't feel rushed. They walked to a small cafe tucked inside the park, just a few wooden tables under a canopy of trees. It wasn't fancy, but it was quiet. Maya chose apple juice and a little sandwich. Daniel ordered black coffee. Jasmine, after a moment of indecision, picked a simple vegetable soup. At first, the conversation was sparse. Jasmine replied politely in short answers. Daniel remained reserved, but Maya, like a thread stitching two worlds together, began chatting about Bunny, about the nights she cried missing her mom, about how her mom was a star in the sky now. Jasmine listened in silence, her eyes glistening with a quiet ache. Maya's story touched a place deep within her that she hadn't dared visit in a while. Daniel noticed and spoke again, not from suspicion, but from shared experience. "My father was strict. I always felt alone even in a big house," he said slowly. "When my wife passed, I closed off. All I had left was Maya and fear." Jasmine nodded, not saying anything, but her eyes spoke for her. Beneath the trees, over paper cups and broken sandwich crusts, 3 strangers from distant lives quietly came closer than they had ever expected. After their simple but heartwarming meal, Jasmine stood up, ready to leave. "Thank you for lunch," she said, her eyes landing on Maya first, then on Daniel. "I'll help find your parents next time, okay?" But Maya grabbed her hand and held on tightly. "Can you not go yet?" Jasmine crouched down, gently brushing a strand of hair from Maya's forehead. "I have to go to work, sweetheart." Daniel watched the moment for a beat, then spoke. "You made her feel safe. That's not something just anyone can do." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I've been looking for someone to spend time with her a few days a week. Help with learning, play a little. Not a formal tutor, just someone like you." Jasmine blinked. "You're offering me a job as Maya's tutor?" Daniel nodded. "If you have time, I understand things may be complicated, but if you say yes, I think Maya would be very happy." Jasmine didn't speak right away. Images flashed through her mind. Hospital rooms, medical bills, sleepless nights. But then she looked at Maya, those wide, hopeful eyes still clinging to her hand. "If I can make it work," Jasmine said softly, "I'd love to." Jasmine started her new role the following week. Every afternoon, after finishing her shift at the laundromat, she pedaled her bike to the Everett estate, a large, quiet home on the edge of the city, surrounded by blooming gardens and winding stone paths. She wasn't a traditional tutor. Maya didn't need strict lessons. She needed someone patient, someone who listened, someone who would spend an entire hour drawing a 3-legged cat simply because she wanted to. They read fairy tales together, colored pictures, strolled through the park, and shared ice cream on breezy afternoons. Maya laughed more, and Jasmine, though her mind still carried the weight of her grandmother's illness, felt her heart grow a little lighter. Daniel occasionally appeared. At first, he stood at a distance, observing. Then gradually he began sitting nearby, listening, sometimes sharing small stories from his childhood. One afternoon, as Jasmine helped Maya write the letter G, the first letter in Grandma, the little girl looked up and tilted her head thoughtfully. "If Mommy were still here," she said, "I think she'd really like you." Jasmine didn't know how to respond. She just gently hugged Maya and smiled. No one said it out loud, but something between the 3 of them was beginning to take shape. Quietly, softly, like a new chapter unfolding in a book written by hearts that had once been broken. It was the day of Maya's year-end school recital, a big event where the city's most prominent families gathered, dressed in elegance and exchanging polished small talk. Jasmine arrived in a simple dress, borrowed from a coworker at the laundromat. She told herself she was just there for Maya, not to be noticed. But as she stepped into the grand, glittering hall, something quiet and unwelcome settled in her chest. The feeling of not belonging. Her name had been neatly printed on a card and placed among the guest seats. Maya spotted her from the stage, waving excitedly in her blue butterfly costume. Jasmine smiled. In that moment, she truly felt like she belonged. But after the performance, a woman in a designer dress approached, eyes sweeping Jasmine from head to toe. "And you are?" "I'm Maya's tutor," Jasmine replied, keeping her voice steady. The woman smiled, a smile without warmth. "Ah, the one Daniel mentioned. Strange. He doesn't usually bring help to events like this." Jasmine froze. But what hurt more than the words was the look from Daniel, standing just a few feet away, having heard it all, and saying nothing. That night, just as Jasmine had changed out of her dress, her phone rang, a call from a neighbor back home. "Your grandmother, she had another episode," the woman's voice trembled. "The doctor says this one's worse. They're not sure she'll make it through the night." Jasmine's heart clenched. She didn't hesitate. Threw a few clothes into a bag, gathered her grandmother's medicine, and sent Daniel a single brief message. "I have to go. My grandmother is critical." No explanation, no apology. She didn't wait for a reply. Jasmine left that night carrying only a backpack, a worn pair of shoes, and a heart that had just started to open, now folding back under the weight of old fears. On the overnight bus, she thought of Maya, probably asleep, hugging Bunny as always, and of Daniel, the man who stayed silent when she needed someone to speak. She wasn't angry, just sad, because just when she began to believe she might truly belong, reality reminded her she was only ever passing through. In the days after Jasmine left, the Everett estate fell quiet. Maya didn't ask much. She simply clutched Bunny all day, sitting by the window, staring out at the garden where Jasmine once taught her how to draw butterflies. Daniel, however, felt Jasmine's absence more than he had expected. There was no more laughter echoing through the halls, no more little feet rushing in to show off messy sketches. The house felt bigger now, but emptier too, like it had swallowed her absence in silence. One late evening, he sat alone in the library, rereading Jasmine's last message. Just one short line. No bitterness, no blame. I have to go. My grandmother is critical. Thank you for everything. Simple words. But for a man who controlled empires, it was the one thing that left him completely powerless. The next morning, Daniel called his assistant. I need to find Jasmine Carter as soon as possible. When he learned that her grandmother was being treated in a small-town hospital, Daniel drove there himself, bringing Maya with him. The hospital hallway was old, the paint peeling, the air stifling. Jasmine was slumped beside a hospital bed, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Jasmine! Maya was the first to run forward, wrapping her arms tightly around her. Jasmine looked up, shock at first, then tears. Daniel followed slowly behind, his eyes heavy with everything he hadn't said. I came to apologize, he said quietly, and if there's still a sliver of trust left, let me make this right. I need a few days to care for my grandmother, Jasmine said, her eyes still fixed on the pale face of the woman who had raised her. But if that offer still stands, I'll come back. Daniel nodded without hesitation. Whenever you're ready, I'll wait. A few weeks later, Jasmine returned to the city. This time not alone. She brought back a heart that had dared to hope, and the woman who had given her everything growing up. Her grandmother was stronger now, strong enough to leave behind the quiet town they'd called home for years. Daniel had taken care of everything. A sunlit room overlooking the garden, a private nurse, a fully stocked medicine cabinet. There was no fanfare, only quiet, complete kindness. From that day, Jasmine was no longer a guest. She became part of the family. She continued teaching Maya, cooked with the housekeeper, tended the garden, and read aloud to her grandmother each night. Daniel changed too. He showed up more often, not just as a businessman, but as a man learning how to love again. He shared his odd routines, childhood memories, and listened more than he spoke. One crisp early winter afternoon, as the three of them sat beneath the bougainvillea, Maya suddenly asked, Miss Jasmine, can you stay with me forever? Jasmine laughed, then looked at Daniel. He didn't answer right away. That evening, as the garden lights flickered like stars caught between leaves, he reached for her hand, gently, as if asking for her heart before her answer. Then he knelt. Not grandly, just quietly. Not because Maya needs you, but because I do. Jasmine Carter, will you stay, not just as her tutor, but as my wife? Jasmine blinked, stunned. Then a tear slipped down her cheek as she whispered, I've been staying for a long time. The wedding was small, warm, held in that very garden. No champagne towers, no unfamiliar guest, just her grandmother, Maya, a few close friends, and the kind of laughter that comes from the heart. Jasmine walked toward Daniel in a simple white dress, holding Maya's hand, as if all three of them were stepping into a new chapter, not defined by past pain, but by present peace and future promise. As Daniel took her hand, surrounded by flowers and soft sunlight, he whispered, It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be us. And so, in the same garden that once witnessed goodbyes and first hellos, a new home was named, not loud, but deep enough to last.